Hello and welcome to the GOMO Podcast Mentor Tournament Week 5 with TracieM versus vortexofdoom. I am mochajones 10 here with my co-commentator.
I'm doing pretty well. I thought I was going to have to work tomorrow, but they apparently decided that American Independence Day was in fact a good enough reason to not work everybody overtime. So yeah, it's good news for tonight's race. Otherwise, I'd be up a little later than I'd like to be. But this is going to be a good...
Yeah, I hear that I'm in the same boat, as in I'm not working tomorrow. Yeah. So are you excited for this race coming?
I am. I've been wanting to commentate one of Vortex's races for a while now. Now, he and I have a bit of history. I've known him for about 26 years now, and I taught him everything that I know about randomizer, and then he went and learned a whole bunch of stuff on his own. So it'll be interesting to see him race today. It looks like we've got a negative countdown on Tracie's side, so it looks like we might be getting started pretty soon here.
And we are going, and they are both starting out in Uncle. Some Uncle starts here. This is open mode, week 5.
Yeah, I will say.
So.
Yeah, I was gonna say the uncle starting with Link's house can make a lot of sense in open, since you get an opportunity to make sure you kill a guard or two before you can check that tree pull on the way up towards Lumberjack if you decide to go that route. If you start at Sanctuary, then it's often a little slower to route in that opportunity, so you're pretty likely to get nothing off that tree pull.
Yeah, so we do already have a bit of divergence with. It looks like Tracie going on saving quitting after checking that first chest in the Link's house and going.
You noticed Tracie taking a little bit of time to make sure that she killed an enemy or two before checking that tree pull. And we have the little crab dropping red rupees. That's always a nice thing to see. Especially if you have an early game push for Zora. I've had that happen where I had nowhere to grind rupees.
Oh yes, I've had that as well. Let's see what's in oh, there's a bombos there. We could have an aggro required.
Yeah, that's an interesting item to see behind the Lumberjack there. Of course, that Lumberjack cave is right now blocked by those two uncannily happy Lumberjacks that only go away once you've defeated the wizard. So it is behind Aga 1 and notably Boots.
No, Vortex, they're opting not to go check that Lumberjack check. That could bode not well for.
Yeah, it's kind of a preference thing if you want to check that. It's one of the things where you can get a little bit of an edge if you decide it's worth getting that knowledge, but sometimes if it's not, it doesn't ever tell you that you don't need to defeat Aghanim. It can only tell you if you do. So we find the gloves in the forest drop down. That's one more step towards not fighting Aghanim. But knowing that it's a medallion, that's a little less clear. Because that could really go either way.
Yes, and we also did pick up a bottle, so we will be able to get that bottle kit check when we hit.
Yeah, that's one of the big differences between Ambrosia, which we were doing for the earlier weeks of this tournament, and Open, is Ambrosia always gives you a sort of a little runway to gear up before you hit this really dense check area. Gives you a chance to get bombs, perhaps a bottle. Whereas in Open, that's why you sometimes see those other routes where you go and check a couple extra checks just to make sure that you can do Kakariko efficiently.
Yes, and as far as I know, I haven't seen a map check, so we don't know what our pendants and crystals are right now. So we don't know what exactly we need.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make a huge difference at this point in the game, since it's not really going to change their routing for the next 5 minutes or so. It's going to be pretty much check Kakariko, depending on what we find there, then probably just straight on to South Shore.
Yes, nothing really big in Lanza right now. There's just rupees and heart pieces and bombs. Maybe something in the.
We find the ice rod. That's another potentially unuseful item. It's an item that you can definitely use, but may not need. It's good to have just in case. Powder's also nice to have just in case.
Magic powder there as well. So that's
it's an interesting. Yeah, I was gonna say it's an interesting item because it's both worth a check, and you know it's nice safety because you can sprinkle it on the anti-fairies to get fairies in dungeons for a quick refill. The check that it's used for is behind several other items, either hammer or Titan's mitts and mirror. So it's not quite like say mushroom or shovel where you just have to go and turn it in. It's kind of a slow burn.
And we did get the Lumaga ring. Chad is asking for hammer and flute. It will come, hopefully.
Yeah, this could be a fluteless seed. Oh, there we have the hammer. But I was just about to say we can't have a hammerless seed. Hammer's simply required for too many things. You can get away with 3 dungeons that don't require an item for you to potentially not need it in a seed. There are a few too many that you need the hammer for.
Vortex buying bomb.
Yeah, I'm only having 3. It's nice to have a full, your pockets full of bombs just in case you need them later. Especially since they haven't found a sword yet.
Tracie, go ahead and pop in that magic and go ahead and drop it in, and both runners are going to check what magic back.
Yeah, it would kind of be a silly move to not do it at this stage in the run. It's easily left until you're, say, potentially doing the smith chain, but since you got the hammer so early and the powder, you may as well do it while you're still in Kakariko here before going south. You know, because when you get those items so early, the chances aren't terrible that it could be something like, you know, Titan's mitts or even boots.
Yes, unfortunately here it was just a piece of.
Not the worst thing to see early game. You certainly hope for more excitement than that, but...
Dude, there's some armor there. Wonder if anyone will come back for that.
I'd doubt it. I certainly wouldn't expect it coming from Vortex, especially if the other armor upgrade is available and that just becomes red mail. I would say that most runners are feeling pretty comfortable with just blue mail and a decent number of hearts. Like maybe 8 to 10 or so, plus blue mail is enough for most runners.
Yeah, so we got our first map check here. Looks like Eastern is a 5/6 crystal, and then Desert is a crystal, and Hera is a pendant.
I remember when I first played Randomizer, I didn't read very much of the documentation, so I was a little confused as to what those red crystals meant. I think you could enlighten us on what exactly that entails.
All right, so those red crystals are more affectionately known as the 5/6 crystals, or the big bomb. We get those 2 crystals, and the reward for that is going up, getting a giant bomb to open up what is called the Pyramid Fairy. And Pyramid Fairy has 2 checks and also something to put into your bomb.
Yeah, and in the vanilla game, that's where you obtain the silver arrows in your last sword upgrade. I didn't know that the requirement was technically dungeons 5 and 6. I'm sure when I played it casually, I just sort of noticed, hey, I can buy a big bomb. Yeah, technically the requirement in vanilla is Ice Palace and Misery Mire, which is kind of an interesting note if you're just sort of casually trying to route a speed run. If you want to pick those up, you can do that before you hit Turtle Rock. So, and we did find the blue mail, which is exactly what I was talking about earlier. So I doubt we'll see them head back into the library for the red mail.
Yes, I very much doubt it as well. Blue mail generally is the most you would need unless you just are not comfortable not getting hit.
Yeah, red mail at this stage in the tournament, red mail would be for the careless. You don't generally need red mail because I mean these runners have been doing, we're in week 5 of this. Both runners have had plenty of matches on stream and several not on stream, so they're well prepared for this.
So the only offensive item besides bombs we have is hammer, and mini Mordorm K is gonna be fun.
Yeah,
Oh, there's also ice rod.
hammer is not ideal for killing these. Honestly, neither is Ice Rod, unless, they get stuck in one place like that, because the travel time, you kind of have to take a little bit of a gamble with their movement patterns. And I think this is going to be sort of the last check we're going to see before they have to start making some decisions. We see the bow, which makes the first decision pretty easy.
Now, here's going to be a question for you. Do you expect anybody to go ahead and go to Eastern without a sword?
I fully expect Vortex to do it.
So they do have boomerang. They have the red boomerang, so it is.
Yeah, there aren't any mini Moldorms in Eastern, which I mean, pretty much everything in there is pretty defeatable with the hammer and the bow. So with 20 arrows, plus the arrow drops that are guaranteed in the dungeon itself, I would say that a sword is pretty optional. A little less optional is the lamp, which is logically required to complete the dungeon. However, most of these runners don't care that much about logic. It's more of a suggestion.
Would you say that logic is more of a guideline, not really?
Well, the way that the logic works is it's how the game decides to generate legal positions for items. For example, it can't hide the lamp in a room that requires the lamp to navigate. So keeping that in mind is very important in deciding which checks to do, especially if you're, using glitches or exploits to, quote, break logic. A common example would be using the fake flippers to go and check some of the stuff up by the Zora's Waterfall without actually obtaining the flippers. Any checks you get from that would be out of logic until those flippers are found, in which case anything that was opened up with the items that you got from that are now available. It's subtle, but you sort of get a feel for it as you play more and more. Another good example would be heading up to Death Mountain without the lamp. You're supposed to need it to navigate the cave, so unless you find the flute, anything up there is a little bit out of sequence.
Yes, now we did get a blue cane in Sahashila's closet, so that can help navigate. Will that help navigate?
Yeah, it'll help, especially in the absence of a sword. Usually you can charge it up and sort of follow the little twinkles. We see Tracie going down and committing to the full dungeon dive in Hyrule Castle, which is going to be interesting as Vortex heads into Eastern Palace here. So we're going to be seeing a number of checks on both sides here. We'll see who gets the better end of it.
I believe that's just a piece of heart in that first check there for Tracie, and we can get a compass in the first chest. So
yeah, Tracie
both
messing up the movement a little there. If you hang high a little bit, that guard doesn't see you. She sort of had to give him a runaround, but he's not too bright.
Ooh, there's a fetch quest right there with the mushroom.
Yeah, I will say it feels pretty good to see those early. You hate getting late in the seed. You're hunting for your go mode item, and then you get one of those, and you're just thinking, damn.
I wonder will Vortex go ahead and turn that in after he leaves East.
Yeah, I could see that. Especially if Moon Pearl shows up, because then that could easily be worked into setting up a water walk, which is a glitch that only works right if you've got the Moon Pearl, which he finds in that chest right there. So hopefully he can do it and sort of spare me the task of having to having to explain a glitch I don't know much about.
That also does open up Dark World.
It's true, we do have the gloves and the hammer, which opens up a couple of portals, notably the one south of Link's house and the one north of Kakariko, which I would consider, given our current item layout, the more important one, because it opens up the possibility of diving into Thieves Town, fully completing Thieves Town at this stage, really, and Skull Woods.
And here's Vortex doing that dark room that we were talking about. Decided to use arrow straps for.
Yeah, I really just know that the room's a big square. I don't really know what he's doing. I think he's probably trying to kill the little red and blue wiggler thing. 'Cause honestly, yeah, that's not really it's a one tile wide hallway. There's not really much need to know your position. Oh, using the Cane of Burna to bypass the combat puzzle here.
It's a very good strat.
Yeah,
especially
it saves you the time of having to make sure you have enough hearts, especially with the blue mail in this dungeon. You can save quite a bit of time by just being careless and damage boosting everything. You kind of waste that time by jumping down the pot for the fairies, but you know, you win some, you lose some. And Tracie heading into Eastern Palace on the left side.
Yes, so it looks like there's one more.
Now this dark room can be a little bit tricky. If you kind of lose your footing, it can be easy to mess up. But Vortex gets through it pretty handily. It's not too hard if you know exactly what you're doing. But if you miss something, one of those Igors wakes up. I don't know what those things are called. The little wiggler snake buddies. If those start moving around, it can get a little dicey.
Let's just call him Creepy Crawly.
Opting to use the Cane of Burna to kill those creepy crawlies rather than a sword spin, because he doesn't have a sword. Some nice presence of mind. Also, one of the things that the mentors can be very helpful with. Not only do they help, you know, in terms of routing, but they can also sort of act as a little booster for presence of mind. A very quick kill on Armos Knights for Vortex.
Yes, and getting a shield out of that, and our first crystal of the game.
Yeah, we have chat telling us that they're called popos. I don't see how anybody would be expected to know that, since this game doesn't have the obligatory cast call at the end of the credits.
It's not like it's Mega Man or anything.
What else did that? Mario does that.
No, Vortex saving and quitting out of Easter, not gonna turn in that mushroom, it looks like. Unless it's gonna route from the.
Yeah, this is just the I think this is just a slightly faster way of getting over there. So either from Eastern, you sort of have to go all the way out of the maze. It's probably slightly faster from Sanctuary. In the absence of the flute. If you have the flute, of course, you just sort of teleport right there. There's no need to set up fake powder here, really. Since we have the legitimate real powder. Yeah, Yardamaster in chat points out that Pod could be routed directly after Eastern here. And the Witch gives us a flute for our troubles here, which is not a flute, a sword. Sorry, I've been thinking about too many items in too short of a time span. So
I could.
yeah, I understand the play of going for that mushroom, just because it's an easy check to orphan, and getting it, having access to it so early, it can be a reasonable play to go for it in case it is one of the many important items that we still have acquired.
It looks like Vortex is going ahead and getting in.
Yeah, this would be the logical next step. It also wouldn't be an unreasonable play to leave that mushroom item, as it is just one item. So you could choose to save the time, to not pick up what could potentially just be another, rupee or piece of heart, or a couple arrows. Happens to be a sword though, which is useful since we do need to pick up 2 of those at some point.
Yes, and Tracie over here in that dark room deciding to use the Cane of Burna to make sure that the Argo are so.
Yeah, it's a safer strat. Now that's a strat I'm pretty sure Vortex has practiced, because that positioning was pretty precise, and I know that he's definitely the type of person who likes to go and work out those strats, in the woodshed.
All right, we do have a map check. Our other 5/6 crystal is in Pod. Looks like the other pendant was T-Rock, and green pendant on Skull Woods.
That's a little unfortunate to see a pendant turtle rock, seeing that we already found the ice rod. Makes it feel a little less useful all of a sudden. But still not, you still take pendant turtle rock. Granted that it's not a required dip, which it easily can be with the lamp over on Vortex's side there in the brewery. That can be an easy check to skip until later. It wouldn't make much difference whether you get that before or after dipping into Thieves Town here, but
Yes, and we are indeed doing that dip into Thieves Town, seeing what it is fully completable, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, I noticed Tracie on the left side, momentarily forgetting that she doesn't have her sword yet, tried to slash at the skeleton, but the skeleton wasn't afraid of the nothing she held in her hands. But yeah, finding that lamp is nice before Palace of Darkness, which would be the one reason that going immediately to Palace of Darkness after Eastern wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense. It is possible to do any dark room without the lamp, but some are harder than others, and Pod can be one of them.
Yeah, that dark maze is pretty tricky. I just now learned it myself, so I completely get that dark maze being tough for even maybe the seasoned runners if they didn't have a sword or something.
But yeah, right now Thieves Town is an interesting dungeon, since it's the 4th dungeon by number in the vanilla game in the Dark World. But it's probably the lowest item requirement dungeon in the entire game. All you need is access to that area via, one Dark World warp or another. And all you need to damage blind is one of a few different weapons. You could do it with the Cane of Burna alone if you wanted to. You get the Titan's Mitts in here in vanilla, but you don't really need them in the dungeon. It's a pretty low commitment dungeon. It's really pretty common to see this one early.
Yes, and you said that just talking about vanilla game, you said it's the 4th crystal that you should get. I actually got it right after I beat Pod in my vanilla game. First time
Yeah,
playing.
yeah.
playing.
And, if you don't read numbers, then that's it's pretty easy to get to, honestly. Because again, all it requires is the use of the hammer, in conjunction with the power glove.
We have Tracie going to get her sword now from the she will play.
Yeah, again, because it's not a bad play to make at this stage in the game. It's still early, and that's not a check you want to necessarily go forgetting about if it's something important. You don't want to put it off until flute when it could be flute.
And another divergence, whereas Vortex went straight into Village of Outcasts, looks like Tracie, she is going to South Shore to go to the Dark World and going probably the Hype Cave.
Yeah, this could be an interesting play, especially if the Titan's Mitts turn up here. Because there's, let's see, 5 checks in Hype Cave, there's Stumpy in the Grove, and the Digging minigame. So if somewhere in those 7 checks, the Power Gloves show up, then you can walk right on into Village of Outcasts. That's not something you bank on, but, you know, getting those checks done can sort of help on the long run, especially if you find the hookshot in there. It's a nice item to find.
I'll say hookshot makes that cave.
Yeah, that's pretty big, especially since with the lamp that Tracie is most likely going to find in Village of Outcasts pretty soon, that puts all of the Light World Death Mountain checks in logic.
Yes, and the less time you have to go up the mountain. Now, Tracie did save and quit out of Hype Cave, probably going to Dark World CAC, or maybe she
might be foregoing that lamp. Probably going to forego that lamp with the hookshot. Those Paradox Cave checks become very enticing. It's, 1 cave 7 checks. It's probably the highest single check density location in the game.
And with that sword, it's going to make navigating the mountain just.
You see Vortex on the right with a well-executed blind script. I don't know the script well enough to know how closely he adhered to it, but it was a quick fight. Yeah, he didn't even go down to the bottom of the screen, which is what you hope for.
Yes,
they both went to the uncle at the start of the game, yes.
Yes, the only difference was that... Ooh, there's an ether from Tracie. Speaking of Tracie, she actually she went to Link's house, saved and quit, and went to...
Yeah, Vortex going up to look at Bumper Cave after finding the cape on Blind. If this is something we want, he can go up and grab it. It's not, he's going to turn around. Half magic on top of Spectacle Rock over on Tracie's side. And inside we find the red cane. The more important cane.
That's a very good...
Not a great place to see it since it's kind of a long check to do. You go in, see if you need it, go down, walk through the cave, come back out. It's a little bit of a pain.
We're getting the rest of the Village of Outcast. Who is it?
Yeah, Vortex isn't as keen on going up the mountain since he is lacking the all-important hookshot. Whereas on Tracie's side, I expect we'll see her exit the cave, jump down, hookshot to the right side, and get into those sweet Paradox Cave chests.
Now I'm hoping that Vortex will, after Digging Game, head towards Hype Cave and...
Oh yeah, that would definitely be the play here. That's one thing that's kind of nice about getting to this point in the game and not having the Titan's Myths yet, is you don't have to make the decision about how you're going to do the Smith chain if you decide to go that route. Because if you have a follower, you're not allowed to play the digging game for some reason. Which includes both the Smith, I believe. Maybe the Smith doesn't count, but definitely the purple chest. And usually you can route the purple chest into a bunch of checks down in this area in the Dark World. Without the Titan's Mints, however, that's not really an option anyway, so you just hit these now while you can. Tracie finding...
And there's a fire rod.
some nice finds up on Death Mountain here.
Hookshot making quick work of those. Yarda, I don't know if we want a full clear T-Rock right now. And there's a master.
Yeah, it probably is worth checking the Turtle Rock Medallion. We see Tracie lining up for a bomb jump here. Now Vortex has intimated to me that this is a bomb jump he's not totally familiar with. He's familiar with most of the tricks, but he has said some bomb jumps give him some trouble. They are rather precise tricks. Not difficult per se, but you do have to line them up just so. And it takes some getting used to.
Yes, and that I can understand. It took me a good minute to learn that bomb jump. But it looks like Tracie is heading to...
Yeah, this play makes a little bit of sense. Just from the perspective of they have hookshot, so Harapot is... I mean, both runners have hookshot, so Harapot will be a possibility. So if you check the first couple items in the front, you see one of the two. It's worth it to use Harapot, warp all the way to the top, you know, beat Moldorm, and if you get the second item, great. If not, you got a pendant, so that's a little bit of insurance if it ends up being a ped seed later on. It's not a terrible play since Harapot can save so much time here. It's not
yes,
a
my only
long
concern
time.
is that it is a pin.
We see Tracie hasn't learned Harapot yet, according to Dweb. I know Vortex is no stranger to Harapot. No, we see Vortex routing straight to Pod, not opting to go up the mountain, which can be a good choice here. Because without the Titan's Mitts, you can't route the Dark World checks into there, and with Hookshot, you kind of would like to be able to do Hookshot Cave at the same time. So with Palace of Darkness fully clearable, being your other red crystal, this is a very sensible choice on Vortex's side.
Yes, I mean, Hera is clearable, but it's also a pendant.
Yeah, it's not quite as juicy.
And for what, 2 items if I'm not...
Yeah, it's sort of biting her a little bit that is really eager to climb up the mountain, even without that lamp for the logical access. When you do a play like that, you're really sort of hoping that you find something in the light world side. Vortex making the sort of safer, a little bit more reasonable, less adventurous play of, you know, I've got another crystal dungeon to clear. Even it'll get the second bomb shop crystal. You know, why not do that in one of the higher check density dungeons in the game? You know, even if it's a bust and you don't find the mitts that you're hoping to find before you go up the mountain, hey, you're still making progress.
Yes, and Trolldorm trolling Tracie right now.
Yeah, I find the length of time one spends fighting Moldorm here is inversely proportional to your chances of success of eventually clearing it. It's either you defeat it right away or you eventually fall down. As we see, Tracie's second go goes quite a bit more smoothly.
Tracie getting that pendant for and another boss.
Yeah, it is nice to go to the trouble of fighting Moldorm and actually finding that, second item. I don't think we saw the basement, which is very, very good news. You don't want to be forced to commit to clearing the basement. Meanwhile, Vortex making his way through the labyrinthine halls of the Palace of Darkness, most of which is very well lit.
I noticed that Tracie got missed.
I didn't notice that get picked up. It's possible. I was busy talking. I didn't see the other item in Tower of Hera. Can we get a confirmation from Carlson on where those mitts came from? Because that is a big find for Tracie, because that lets Tracie do the Dark World checks up here after all in the same trip, which sort of mitigates a little bit that... Okay, so it was in Paradox Cave. So yeah, that mitigates the disadvantage of having rushed up here. Since we know that Vortex found the lamp in Village of Outcasts, which is logically available to Tracie, she just hasn't picked it up yet. All of these checks that Tracie is finding are in logic. Vortex spending a little bit too much time trying to pick up that skull. Poor Yorick.
Oh, and Tracie getting dead.
Yeah, those dead rocks are, my gut says they were hastily programmed enemies. Their collision detection is a little bit strange. Like that. You can't tell me you can't climb that ladder. But yeah,
The one thing you can do with those dead rocks is just continuously hookshot them out.
Yeah, that's sort of what you go to if they've wronged you one too many times. And Turtle Rock is Bombos. So to enter Turtle Rock, we need to clear Aghanim.
Hopefully we don't need that.
Yeah,
but we do just get flippers in Hell.
But yeah, it's kind of I kind of like seeing Bombos on Pendant Turtle Rock, having seen Bombos in Lumberjack. It's just maximum ambiguity here. We're still not sure if that's going to be necessary. We now know the medallion is important, but for a potentially unnecessary dungeon. But as pendant dungeons go, Turtle Rock is one of the less clear-cut ones. It's probably Turtle Rock and Swamp Palace are the pendant dungeons that are most often not optional after all.
All right, so I'm going to ask this question. Just playing devil's advocate here. If we want a ped seed, what would...
Well, we would need to... Let's see, we need... Ped seeds with Turtle Rock Pendant are not as common since Turtle Rock requires so many items in the first place. Since we already know where Samaria is, we already know where flippers are. We haven't located Mirror or Flute yet, both of which are required to enter a number of dungeons, notably Swamp Palace and Misery Mire. So either one of those two could be on the pedestal, since neither of those two items are required for any of the pendant dungeons.
So the question is, did this seed get generated for a ped seed?
Yeah, that's always a question you sort of have to consider in the back of your mind. You don't want to bank on a ped seed too often because ped seeds take longer, which isn't an option you want to bank on. However, you don't want to waste time hoping that an increasingly likely ped seed won't actually end up happening. You have to sort of get a feel for when to identify that it's really looking like it's turning into that, or to a lesser extent, looking like a turtle rock dip. Right now, the turtle rock dip is going to be really hard to read with Bombos on Lumberjack. That's going to require so many items before we could get to it in the first place that it's going to kind of be hard to decide, okay, maybe something's in Turtle Rock. Because first you're going to need to defeat Aghanim 1, then you're going to need to, if given you find the boots, go get the medallion, go up there, and then you can see if that play ends up being worth it. That would be a really hard read to make.
During the explanation, we have Vortex going and doing Helmasaur. 17 hammer hits, and that mask comes off, and then arrow shots as well.
Yeah, I usually do the arrow shots as well. One time, I realized that hitbox is actually very small, and once that helmet is gone, Helmasaur moves a little faster, and sometimes you're not quite ready for it, and all of your shots start going wide. But Vortex cleans it up very nicely as Tracie is about to find her lamp, which is going to tell her that everything that she got on the mountain is now back in logic, including those mitts, including the Cane of Samaria, including the Fire Rod. So now Skull Woods is logically clearable. So Tracie, because of that early mountain play, is going to be able to play Skull Woods, or Thieves Town, getting my alphabet mixed up, right into Skull Woods. Now, Skull Woods, again, being one of our pendants. However, it's the green pendant, which makes it worth one more check than normal, bringing it up to a staggering total of 3 checks. Not unusual to check the front of Skull Woods, especially in open.
Yeah, and now we have Vortex going up the mountain, getting his items up there. So they're pretty much just crisscrossing routes right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Vortex makes the Hera play. We also, interestingly enough, noticed Vortex not checking the flipper checks quite yet, which again makes sense given everything. We've had this mountain in logic for a while. You got the hook shot. It's time to go up the mountain.
Yes, that's a good call. Going up that mountain. Oh, getting hit. But yeah, go ahead, do your checks that in logical order, and hopefully not go into Hera. Maybe.
Yeah, it'll depend on a couple things. It maybe will be a little bit less likely for Vortex and Gamma to make that call, given they found flippers. They had the lamp already. One thing that would be interesting would be, from Tracie's perspective, if she had found the lamp up on the mountain, that would tell her that logical mountain access would then be the flute. So that would tell her that the flute was available somewhere. However, not the case this time, as Vortex picks up his Cane of Samaria, notably before either runner has to do Ice Palace, which is always a relief to see. Especially for
some. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, especially for some newer runners, some of them seem to have forgotten how Ice Palace works normally when you don't have the Cane of Samaria yet.
Oh, goodness. IPBJ is still I do recommend people learning both Icebreaker and IPBJ. Just saying.
Yeah, I willfully avoid using those glitches, and I am well aware that it costs me time. I do not expect to win a race if Ice Palace is required, just simply because I prefer not to do those. I take the L every time.
It's so satisfying to clip through that wall and have your chat say hacks.
Yeah, it's an undeniable time saver. Yeah, Incoherent says lukewarm take, learn IPBJ first. Honestly, I would say that if you're only going to learn Icebreaker, you're really doing yourself a disservice because that's not always going to be available. It's very, very easy for Samaria to not be available before Ice Palace has to be completed logically. And it's Ice Palace is always a very strange dungeon because the items that you have going into it can really change the routing that is actually logically required to complete it. Sometimes you need hookshot, sometimes you need the Cane of Samaria. It's just a very, very interesting dungeon, and you don't want to get too complacent in just skipping the first half of it. There are some rooms that can really trip you up if you're used to never ever seeing them.
Yes, and I will say that the channel on GoMo Podcast, their last episode was actually talking about top 10 glitches that runners should know. So shout out to the GoMo Podcast for hosting this tournament and just providing amazing content.
Were any of those glitches the block delete, or does that not even count? That's about the heaviest glitching I do is I delete blocks with the mirror.
It was on the list of glitches for people to choose from. It was kind of an honorable mention, but
yeah, it's a pretty precise trick, but you can spam it, so it's free.
Yeah, that's kind of what they're talking about. Anyone, if you just spam the mirror, can break it.
There aren't too many places where it saves a ton of time. Right here, where Vortex is pretty much the one place where it saves the most time. You can save close to the same amount of time here with this hookshot clip that he just barely failed, but obviously it's a little bit more precise than just spamming the item button as you walk through a block.
Yeah, that's Yoko does make a good point that you can't do that in a dungeon because you will just mirror out.
I'm embarrassed to admit that early on I thought I was so smart and I tried it in Swamp Palace, and then I was like, wait a minute, why do I think I'm smart? I have also accidentally used the mirror instead of bombs because they are both round and blue. True story.
Vortex learning now that he needs bomb boost for T-Rock if he goes there.
Yeah, I'm sure he and Gamma are having a discussion right now about what that could possibly mean. You do want to keep that in the back of your head because there are a lot of checks in Turtle Rock. 5 in the dungeon itself, 4 of which are at the very, very bottom. So through the entire dungeon, and there's also Mimic Cave. I would expect if we see the book at some point, we might see the runners, go and check that pedestal just to be extra safe that this isn't pointing us towards that ped seed.
Corbett, that's right. Both runners have shovel.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting point. Chat pointing out that Vortex and Gammachu did not opt to route that lumberjack check in. So right now, Tracie and Azder are the only ones that know that Turtle Rock is behind Boots and Aga 1, which beyond all of the other things that you usually need for Turtle Rock. And yeah, we haven't seen Shovel Check from either runner. They've been pretty staunchly in the Dark World on both sides, and without Mirror, it's not an easy check to make. Tracie would have liked to see it off of, say, the Dig game, because then she could have routed it in while going over towards Pod. And Vortex returns from his trip to the mountain. Vortex, having already cleared Pod, may... Let's see, what does he choose to do? So
Will he do his
Whirlpool. Oh yeah, now he's gonna go do these flippers checks that he didn't do earlier.
Yes, sweet. Mirrorless Pod. That is the name of the game that Vortex has already done, and Tracie is in right now.
Yeah, my solution to Mirrorless Pod is I don't know, just play it. Just take the lost time.
Yeah, the thing is, you can't even perfectly set up a death warp unless you just decide to hit every enemy, especially with Blue Mail and all these hearts you have.
Yeah, the death warps are kind of hard to set up. I think we did see Vortex setting up for it in the Dark Maze, which is basically the best place to do it. You got all those fire hazards around. It's pretty easy to just take hits when you're going through that maze. So we're gonna see the Waterfall Fairy, and most likely we're gonna see Zora and Zora Ledge.
And these are new checks that we're getting right now.
Yes, we have seen neither runner go for these. Tracie having not found the flippers yet, and Vortex having found them earlier. And both of them had better things to do when fake flippers would have come into the discussion. Yeah, fake flippers is a pretty common thing to route in early game. Not when you're in go mode for Crystal Eastern, though. That sort of takes precedence because any checks you get with fake flippers are obviously out of logic and are unlikely to be the item you need to progress.
Oh, and Zora just giving us some very expensive arrows right now.
Yeah, I recently had flippers on Zora before, which was very nice to see because I had just confirmed that I would really like to pick up that sword on Zora Ledge, and the king was kind enough to grace me with the feet of his people.
That's very gracious of King Zora.
And they're premium arrows. Those were 50 rupees a piece. Vortex being careful here not to orphan the hobo.
We'll call those golden arrows. They do the same amount of damage as.
Yeah, I would expect to see this go into an Ice Palace clear right now. Everything in Ice Palace is fully clearable right now since we have the Logical Fire Rod. We have, we don't have that half magic, which would be nice, but not necessary. But yeah, so far we're waiting on Mirror or Book. Or rather, Book or Mirror plus Flute for access to Desert. Flute for access to Mire plus whatever medallion is required to open it. And the Mirror for Swamp Palace. So we're going to need to see at least the Mirror and the Flute. And possibly the Book if one of those two is actually inside of Desert Palace. Now, coming up here, we're going to see Vortex perform Icebreaker, unless he's feeling particularly charitable and wants to live in solidarity with me, which I don't think he's going to do.
I mean, if he knows it, he'll probably do it.
I don't. He does know Icebreaker. He 100% knows Icebreaker. I tried Icebreaker once just from watching him do it, and it's like, I'd have to look up how to do this. Not interested. I'll just keep doing Ice Palace the normal way. I'm too patient for my own good.
No, he's not hitting.
Yeah, opting not to hit the switch, which is not a terrible decision, I guess. It's useful to go hit the switch. I'm not familiar with this routing of Ice Palace, so I'm not sure of all the implications of it. It is going to require him to... I think it requires him to grab the big key at some point.
And what are those?
It's a nice thing to see in your first Ice Palace chest. Pretty bad thing to see in your last Ice Palace chest if you do it the vanilla route. See, look at that. Look how much time he saved there. That was like 0.25 seconds.
Oh, okay. That's like he didn't just dash on through, and that makes all these ice rooms so much easier.
It's true because you just I a couple times when playing without the boots and we find the flute in here too. This was a very fortuitous dungeon. Boots and flute, the two biggest time savers in the game.
So immediately going to Cacti.
I would imagine so, especially since you find the boots. It's not even a long enough trip to consider doing something else on the way.
So we are getting an ice once he goes through.
Yeah, this routing Ice Palace in the dungeon order, it is a nice Ice Palace, but it is rather obvious dungeon routing rather. Just because, like, as mentioned, basically all of the other crystal dungeons are locked behind an item we don't have yet. So your options are essentially, okay, do we do Ice Palace and get a crystal, or do we make a hard read and do a, dive into Skull Woods? Because obviously going back up for Tower of Hera wouldn't be a huge play at this point. It'd be kind of a waste of time, even if we didn't know what was in there already.
Yeah, does Vortex still have that?
I don't recall. It would be a nice thing to see right at this particular moment. Playing with fire there by oh, he has a blue potion, so probably I think he might have picked that up from the waterfall. Oh yeah, I mean he did walk right by there. If you got the coin for it, you fill one of those bottles up with.
Now, a good play I would make if our Vortex would be activating that flute, immediately going to see what the Mar.
Yeah, if it's Bombos, that could be very interesting because, as we mentioned earlier, Vortex still doesn't know where Bombos is.
Vortex deciding to use the
sword beam.
The sword beam to dupe.
Increases the efficiency. I recall one time I was griping to him about how foolishly designed it was to require you to use all of your magic bar to start this boss fight and not give you a full magic refill. And he was like, well, you can dupe the fire rod shots with the sword beams. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, when they made the game back in the 90s. I don't think they were thinking about that glitch. Yeah, Vortex is... He really only started running this game fairly recently. And I think his first rando that he really played was only... well, it was a couple months ago now, but it wasn't until, you know, this April or May. And he's gotten really into all of those niche little tricks that that not everybody does.
We had several people in the chat saying that that's the first time they've seen that, or they didn't know that that was actually a thing that you could do. Yeah, it is one of the few times.
Yeah, I recall another time I was watching a race and the runners were going down into Swamp Palace, and the diver down glitch was coming up, which lets you skip a handful of puzzles in that dungeon. And they were using the Cane of Samaria strat, which is generally considered easier to set up. And I'd never seen Vortex do anything other than the bomb setup, which many runners admit to not being comfortable with. So Vortex, definitely the type of runner to pick up those little things that can, you know, give him an edge some of the time, not all the time. Certainly pays off.
Yes, and Vortex opting to do the boost checks first before going and turning.
You know, I'm mentioning those little tricks to give a competitive edge. Ironically, that's not really been the competitive edge here. It was the really the putting off of the mountain climb a little bit, just to making the routing a little bit more obvious. We see Vortex checking that lumberjack cave right here on the way to activate the flute.
Yes, and Tracie going to find out that she's going to have some very expensive arrows.
Yeah, with 1,200 rupees, you're not too concerned.
Let's see if she will also make that Ice Palace play, getting her.
You know, if Vortex is really feeling the need to grab that red mail, now would be the only logical time to do it. Now activate that flute. Take 30-40 seconds and grab that red mail. You know, why not?
Yeah, put those 07. I should have said that when we first. It looks like that's exactly what he's doing too. Going to get that red mail, maybe? Yeah.
Kind of surprises me. I thought by now Vortex would have a little more faith in his own abilities. But I remember when he started out, when he's first learning these tricks, part of the idea was he was just not comfortable enough with his actual gameplay, so he felt he needed them. So now he has free reign to be as sloppy as he likes with some of the bosses. Oh, looks like he's doing the dig spot, so he figured he'd pick it up on the way. That's certainly not a bad plan. If he wasn't doing this, then it would be basically 30-40 seconds just for red mail. But if you're routing that dig spot in, it becomes much less of a time waste. Really, only the 5 to 10 seconds or so it takes to dip in and go grab it. And Vortex definitely does not want to leave that dig spot unchecked. It has become very important for him in the past. We'll say that.
Alright, so Vortex getting a blue potion and then going immediately to the desert. Because we have not even seen Gina's. Well, he's checking ledge, didn't check Gina's.
Yeah, Agina's cave is probably the easiest, you know, immediately available check to skip. You don't want to skip too many of those. Another one that's kind of easy to skip would be Ice Rod Cave, because it's a little bit out of the way. It's a little easier to return to with Flute. You can save it for later if you want, but the one that's sort of most often saved until later is Agina's Cave. Because if you're gonna pick one, that sort of minimizes the risk. Because if you're just hoping that one of the relatively few items you need is not in this one of 216 possible locations in the game. And once you get Mirror, you can route it in right after Mire and Checkerboard Cave. And we see that Ether is, in fact, required to open Misery Mire. So Vortex is able to dive right in.
Thus, it means that there is not going to be an AGA 1. Tracie making her way through Ice Palace while Vortex is entering into Mission.
We aren't quite out of the AGA 1 woods yet, because we do still need Mirror, which has to be somewhere, and that somewhere could possibly be Turtle Rock.
That is technically.
So it's I mean, it's not something you bank on, but it would be foolish for either of our runners to get to this point and completely dismiss that possibility. That's how you get hard last locations.
Who knows? It could be one of these two checks in.
Yeah, you certainly don't. You certainly don't count on the most inconvenient possible routing, but you also have to bear it in mind. Because as you check other checks, it becomes more and more likely that, you know, that thing that you wanted so badly to forget about could be exactly what you need. We see Vortex getting really good Mire routing with that early big key, opting that the two checks aren't worth securing in here, going straight for the boss. Now this makes sense because there are still a lot of checks around for him to sort of dip his toes into. So, hoping that the mirror shows up sooner rather than later. Though finding it in Mire would be pretty nice, because you could route that into an immediate Desert Palace check.
Oh, Vortex getting spooky action. I was wondering if he got it set.
Yeah, he generally always sets that up. If he doesn't set it up, it's because he forgot to set it up.
Setting it up is relatively easy. It's just you gotta make sure you don't do certain things once you get.
Yeah, which probably is part of why he decided to take the go mode route rather than, you know, spending time looking for other checks once he got that early big key. Makes it a lot easier to keep that spooky action. He doesn't like blowing up walls, apparently. Unfortunately, he does have to fight this. He does use the blue potion. Master Sword is not ideal for fighting Vitrus. Vitrus has a lot of hit points.
Yes, and TracieM, nice, good kill on the oh, there's a Quake medallion, but nice good kill on Coast. Lumaga saying spam that sword. So when you're using Kate, the less movement you do, the more magic that you don't use. Or the less magic you actually use. So if you're spamming that sword, slashing as quickly as you can, you waste as minimal magic as you can.
Tracie showing off a little bit of tech to open up that King's Tomb while keeping her bonk count at the end of the game as low as possible. Worth it for those 3 bombs that she found under there. Don't know why they buried those in the king's tomb instead of the king, but perhaps the king was bombs. You don't know.
Maybe that king was the bomb.
Yeah. So Vortex, having found the Quake Medallion on the boss, now only has to find one more check. I would imagine he grabs his key, flips the switch, checks this upper room here, and then I would imagine he goes back out rather than going for cutscene chest. And he finds the item, so it doesn't matter. So nice quick 2 items in Mire. But we're still missing that mirror. We'd like to see it. The good news is it can't be in Swamp, because that's what we need it for. And Swamp is usually a fairly lengthy dive. You don't like seeing items in a... You don't like missing go mode items in a seed where you've got Pendant Swamp that's still fully available. It's just not a great feeling knowing you might have to dive in there for Lord knows how long before you find what you need. We see
a couple of,
the...
Yeah, I was going to say, a couple of checks
here.
that Vortex can do is Big Bomb, and also he can route in Catfish as well.
Also Pyramid Ledge, because I don't think either runner has made the pilgrimage to the pyramid at all yet.
That is all.
Yeah, Tracie making the same routing that Vortex made earlier, grabbing that red mail for going this way anyway to route that shovel check in. This is a pretty obvious play. You don't save much time by not picking up the red mail.
Tracie's already done her so.
Yeah, so right now we're waiting on Mirror for go mode. However, both runners would like to see a little bit more in the weaponry department. If called upon, I know Vortex will do Master Sword Silverless if called upon, but that is a call most runners do not like to see. And there we go. We've got the Tempered Sword, so Silverless is a lot more comfortable now.
So we're still on the hunt for that mirror as Vortex is heading towards Catfish while Tracie is going into Mystery. Let's see if Tracie will do the same route as Vortex. It didn't look like she set up Spooky.
Yeah, it's a relatively obtuse glitch that, you know, it doesn't save a whole lot of time. It saves the screen transition and it doesn't save you a lot of trouble. I do like the name of that glitch though. It's a very well named glitch. It's a very highbrow name.
We are still on the hunt for that mirror as Catfish just gives us.
Yeah, I imagine we see Vortex check graveyard area and Bonk Rocks. Or no, we see him, I think, heading over towards Skull Woods. I don't recall if we saw Vortex do those boots checks up in the north area earlier or not. I did see Tracie do them. Okay. Yeah, I had only recalled seeing Tracie do those checks. Unless I was looking at the wrong stream, which is entirely possible.
You just don't want to check your brother's stream.
You know, why instead of watching the restream, why don't we just, each of us takes one stream, and each of us only knows about half of the game. Now, Vortex has his shield stolen, but he yoinks it right back. Oh, I think we see Vortex making for the, possibly making, well, no, because he doesn't have the mirror. I was thinking maybe we were going to see the pedestal check, but that doesn't make sense since we don't have the book or the mirror. If we had either of those two things, it would be very obvious to do literally anything else at this point.
Vortex realizing that he doesn't have any.
Ooh, narrowly narrowly avoids that Wallmaster. Tracie opting to clear out the dungeon of items first, which makes sense if she didn't set up spooky action. You have to set that glitch up as you're transitioning into the dark world, and you have to avoid performing certain actions until it becomes relevant 3 or so rooms before the boss fight. So if you have a long dungeon exploration, which unfortunately Tracie is going to have, not having the knowledge that the other item check is going to be on the boss, it ends up being a little easier to do if you've got a fast mire. So I would guess one of the last items that the runners would like to see now would be the book. That would not be ideal, because the mirror opens up both of our final 2 dungeons. Final 2, Tracie has Mire yet to complete, but she'll be finishing it up in fairly short order. But mirror makes Desert and Swamp Palace fully clearable. Book opens up Desert, but obviously does nothing for Swamp Palace. All it does is open up a whole bunch of checks that our runners will then have to go investigate in order to find that mirror.
Tracie saying cutscene chest as Vortex is fighting.
Yeah, Tracie is
trying
routing.
to avoid the...
That Misery Mire routing is unfortunate for Tracie.
We get an item and the...
Yeah, so that's nice to see. Rushing back of Skull Woods, and finding an item on the boss of Pendant Skull Woods, especially if it's green pendant. So now you know there's only one item left in the dungeon to find. You can check this one fairly quickly. If you're super lucky, this is the other item, and then you got both the items, plus green pendant to check, and you're feeling pretty good about the efficiency of this dip.
Is this a...
I have mixed feelings about that mode.
It feels like every boss is...
So no mirror in Skullwoods proper. Still have one item left to find. We don't want to leave these stones unturned. This is now the point in the seed where they're getting close and they're running out of checks to look at. Most of the overworld checks have been routed in relatively efficiently so far. We haven't seen a Smith chain yet, unless I'm mistaken.
I don't...
So I would imagine if we don't see the mirror in here, we see Vortex at least start the Smith chain, perhaps not take it all the way to completion, and check those handful of checks along that route, because the last time we were in this general area, we didn't have the Titan's mitts yet on Vortex's side. Vortex gonna set up for the bomb jump. Doesn't like to navigate those rooms apparently.
Doing this spins track, getting that blue.
Anything he can to avoid destroying walls, it seems. Tracie getting sniped by Vitreous over there. Usually you think you're safe that far to the side, but
Yeah. Usually, I've seen hugging that far left corner.
Now, the best play is trying to get the quickest kill possible.
Oh.
Not very easy with the Master Sword, though. And Vortex almost going into the Smith area before picking up our friend Jeremiah here. So named, I believe, because he is a bullfrog.
Yeah, Hurry's a good friend. Anyway, so we have hammer pets coming up here, and we have boots.
And a sword. Very important that we have a sword.
Yes, because you cannot do this if you didn't.
Yeah, so this is item dashing, which is when you use the boots and a button item. I believe it's the A button. I forget my buttons sometimes because I don't use an actual Super Nintendo controller. But when you use them on the same frame. And interestingly, with the hammer, it can hammer down pegs, but only if there is a sword hitbox for the hammer effect to be positioned over. So a lot of people are confused when they try to do it without a sword for the first time and are confused as to why it's not working, even though they're performing the item dash correctly.
All right, so chat is wondering, and I kind of am as well. Maybe she's double checking to see what the.
Yeah, that would be a pretty big misplay. Oh, Tracie never checked the Dark World checks here. Apparently, Super Bunny Cave was as yet unchecked. Perhaps they had forgotten it earlier and they had realized at that moment that they had skipped it.
Vortex going to turn in that green pendant. Maybe.
I would imagine if it is, Vortex would probably be feeling pretty good about his position in the race. It's not, but at 121 in, that's not a bad time to be finding your go mode item on green pendant at all. You usually start feeling bad if you're pushing 2 hours and that happens. Then you're feeling like there's something you could have done better along the way. But at this stage, looking for that mirror and having the option to go for that for the green pendant play is you've done some pretty nice routing up until that point. And Vortex is going to be looking at I believe purple chest at this point.
Yes, he is doing purple chest, and looks like Tracie is going to go check the. So let's look. What checks do we have that our runners can make to try and figure out what Restreamer could be if it's.
I'll go one into Turtle Rock. It's starting to look like more and more of a possibility here. I don't recall if Vortex ever went and checked Aguma's cave.
I don't think either runner.
Looks like he's gonna go for that now. And if it's not in here, they might have to consider the possibility that we've got to go down into Turtle Rock, which means we've got to go and kill a wizard.
Alternate, it could be.
Yeah, that would be this now. At this point, we would love to see Book. If we find garbage here, then our options are pretty slim.
Looks like I.
I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. Vortex and Gammachu have been pretty thorough and as I mentioned earlier, pretty efficient in their routing. Got pretty much everything on the mountain in a single check. The only thing that they would have to, return to areas for would be for mirror and book checks, neither of which we have. So yeah, is coming to the conclusion, the unfortunate conclusion that oh no, Vortex and Gammachu have not been in Harrow Castle yet, so they're probably sweating right now. They probably made the gamble that I hope something we need isn't in this escape sequence. I don't think we've seen Dark Cross yet either. I don't recall if Tracie went all the way through. Tracie did not have lamp at that point.
So it could be in Dark Cross.
We know it's not in the escape sequence proper, but I'm pretty sure Tracie just went down to the cell and then decided she'd had enough of Hyrule Castle. Given that this is a Mentor tournament race, I'm gonna say that I have a feeling that it's going to be Turtle Rock, given what we've seen in previous races. I alluded to it earlier, but Vortex famously had a race. I think it was Vortex versus Darity Peels, where both of them made it all the way into Ganon's Tower with Pendant Turtle Rock and Misery Mire before discovering that the Ganon's Tower Big Key was nowhere to be found on the left side of Ganon's Tower, requiring both runners to exit Ganon's Tower and go on a wild goose chase for the Cane of Samaria, which up until that point was completely unneeded. So it's far from out of the question for a suddenly required Aga 1. Spike Cave has in fact been checked, yes.
Vortex taking a Death Warp, and instead of going to the basement, is going into...
Yeah, it's an interesting play. So this is this may be partially because of what I mentioned earlier, that previous race where it ended up being on the shovel of all things too, the Cane of Samaria. So you can make one of two choices here. You make the play that it couldn't possibly be the worst case scenario, or you make the play that if it's the worst case scenario, I want to cover that first. Because at this point, with how long they put this whole area off, if it was an escape and Tracie's already done it, then they're basically out of luck anyway. So they may as well make the play that it's in Turtle Rock and they need to do this and not waste the time checking that basement item.
Vortex making a good run up.
Yeah, well, hopefully it pays off, because I would imagine that's the mentality here. That would be the reason to not go down to the basement and check Dark Cross. Just the possibility, knowing that your opponent could have done that, any time in the last 45-50 minutes. If that's mirror and you're only getting there at an hour and a half in, well, then it's GG already. So you make the long play and hope that was the right choice all along, and hopefully save a little bit of time over an opponent who may be playing things a little bit safer.
All right, we are almost to Aga. So,
is that question somehow related to colored balls?
Yes, it is somehow related to colored
How did
balls.
I know?
How many blue balls do you think Agus is gonna?
In my experience, and this is based on nothing really, I'm gonna go with a healthy 4.
That's usually what I say. So I'm gonna go 6 this time. I want this to be
I once got 12.
just how this seed has been.
Answer, Lori of Light. The Bombos medallion was on Lumberjack Ledge, which is notably required to enter Turtle Rock. I don't think either runner has checked the Dark Cross. I would be completely surprised if neither of them had checked the back of Escape, that room with the 3 chests. I don't specifically recall it, but it's been in Logic for so long that I feel that was a pretty early check. Probably right after we got gloves.
I believe Tracie.
So if Tracie checked Dark Cross, then
No, I believe she.
the back, yeah. Yeah, but if we haven't checked Dark Cross, then this could be a big wild goose chase. This could be a very very expensive play on Vortex's side. But if there's anything that Rando has taught any of us, it's, you know, when life gives you items, you commit to a Turtle Rock dip.
Cause Randos.
I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to decide between Turtle Rock dip and no Turtle Rock dip, and ever been bitten by doing a Turtle Rock dip. It's somehow, if all the stars happen to align like that, it's almost a sign. You gotta take it.
Now here's gonna be a question for you. Do you think that Vortex would go and check Dark Cross before flying up?
It's possible. It's possible that that they've logically been able to determine what it is, because 2 of the items have to be the map, and if they haven't seen the key yet, then they know it's a key. So that could be another reason why they don't check a Dark Cross, which I didn't pay close enough attention to either of our runners' Hyrule Castle basement dives to be certain of that. But that would be another probably more sensible reason to commit to the Turtle Rock dip, is that you know that Dark Cross is not going to. So, barring something relatively obscure that I missed, whether or not our runners checked, I don't specifically recall seeing Ice Rod Cave, but I do think we did check it. It seems that Turtle Rock is the only possible play here. And honestly, this isn't too bad, because it would be a very hard read to have done this any earlier. I think I alluded to this earlier, and you just, when you see that setup, that's not something you're gonna just Hail Mary and go for. And even being in this position only an hour and a half in is really, it's pretty dang quick here. Now, depending on when we see the mirror, this could end up being a fair bit of length tacked onto the overall run, since it's, you know, an extra dungeon's worth of time for simply a check that enables us to do our final 2 dungeons, which we still have to do. But this could be looking good for a sub 2 time.
First out of mirror.
Yeah, I would argue that you could also make a YOLO Aga 1 play if you want to make your cranium appear gargantuan. That could be another, perhaps less legitimate reason, but more entertaining. Similar to another favorite strategy of mine, YOLO Tile Room in Ganon's Tower. It rarely pays off, but boy, do you look like a genius when it does. Yeah. Also of note, it's still possible that we get the mirror on the pedestal. In which case, Tracey has a slight edge. However, knowing that Vortex knows Harapot, that's gonna get equalized in fairly short order. Yeah, at this point, since Vortex still hasn't been into Tower of Hera, I would expect if he doesn't find the mirror in here, he would go straight to Hera next. And if he doesn't find it in Hera, and he still hasn't found the book by that point, well, then it's pretty obvious where we've got to check next.
Alright, so we are heading into the, what's this, vanilla bit key chest open for...
Yeah, at this point, since you don't want to, we're not here to kill Trinex, we're here to find all the item checks. So there's no real reason to steal that key, walk back out through this door, and skip that chest. I think the chances that you could really figure out whether or not you could skip that chest are pretty. I think the chances are pretty much nil at this point. There are too many chests later on that could contain things. It's pretty hard to know whether or not that chest is safe to skip. Yeah, I would imagine if we find the book in here, we would see both runners continue on until all of the items were found. Book isn't quite good enough, and with how many checks there are at the bottom of Turtle Rock, it would be pretty bold to leave with just the book in hand.
Yeah, we hard nope out of this dungeon. If we get book, I wouldn't YOLO out, just cause Mirror could be further.
Yeah, and at this point, if Mirror ends up being further in, it's not a huge time commitment to continue going, but it would be an enormous time commitment to have to come back. Because again, that would be a whole nother Death Mountain climb as well. It's much better to finish the dungeon while you're up here, clear it out, make sure you've got everything, and then go back into the rest of the world. Because if you don't find it in here, it's got to be on the pedestal. Unless, of course, we find the book, in which case, you check desert first, and then you check the pedestal.
Laser Bridge and Tronics. That's what we're about.
Yeah, I pray for an abundant laser bridge here.
Having trouble getting the setup there. Go ahead and open in that safe.
Yardomaster makes Yardomaster makes a salient point, or at least it would be a salient point if Mirror wasn't hard required to do anything in Swamp Palace at all. We can look at the nice empty river in the first room, but can't do much else other than that. At this point, I'm not even surprised. I've seen too many seeds turn out this way in this tournament. It's almost expected. It's probably frustrating for the runners. And there we find the mirror.
There it is. There's.
At least it wasn't Ped. It was basically Ped. Ped would have added
Mirror
maybe 2.5 minutes to the seed at that point. Well, no, Hera hadn't been done. Okay, 4.5 minutes. So we have go mode unless Vortex decides that he really wants to hunt for the silver arrows.
No. Do you know how comfortable our runners are with the silverless game?
Vortex will do it in a heartbeat. I know that for sure. I can't speak for Tracie. Especially with tempered swords, silverless isn't too bad. I know Vortex has practiced silverless enough that he knows the timing, and with tempered sword, it's not too many hits. We may even see the half magic grabbed. It's not. I wouldn't say it's likely, but we may see it. Since we know it's on top of Spectacle Rock with Mirror, we can grab it.
Especially if you accidentally miss on Torch Glass. That would be very...
Yeah. Though, at this point, since we do have the flute, you may as well just fill your bottles up with potions, you know, before you head up the mountain to go to GT. Basically just as good as grabbing that half magic, and probably... Honestly, it's more helpful than grabbing the half magic and a little quick. And yeah, I said I couldn't speak for Tracie, but I wouldn't expect it of any of the runners to be especially uncomfortable with silverless. It's daunting if you've never tried it before, if you don't know how it's done in the first place. But after you've sort of learned the timing for it, it becomes extremely unattractive to wait on fighting Ganon until you find silvers. It just saves so much time over an item hunt. You just don't want to keep in the game.
That's very true, especially if you know you can go ahead and beat it.
It's sort of in the same category as knowing your dark rooms without the lamp. All it takes is one seed for lamp to be, you know, at the bottom of Pendant Ice Palace for you to say, you know what, I'm not interested in looking for this anymore. Let's just learn how to do these rooms blind. Yeah, and that's another good point. Silvers can often be in GT. I've had a seed where I've been fully committed. Okay, you know, I guess I have to do silverless for another seed. And in the second to last chest in GT, I find the silvers. So it's like, okay, well, I've been bailed out. It can happen. Yeah.
Vortex accidentally forgetting to drain the swamp.
It's pretty easy to do. The entrances look pretty similar. Especially if you use a palette swap, you can sometimes get confused as to which dimension you're currently in. And Trinex pointing out that given the logic that these seeds are using, Silvers are not in any way required by logic. In certain generation algorithms, they are required. I believe it's the basic item placement requires silvers to be available. Or rather, it requires... I don't know, actually, if silvers are required. I know it requires you to be able to obtain Tempered Sword before certain bosses. I don't think there are any such restrictions in the advanced item placement, though. Bow logic is rather unique, though. I once had a seed where it was a required full Turtle Rock clear for Flute, which led to Mirror, which led to into Misery Mire, which led to Logical First Arrow, because I found the second arrow upgrade in Ganon's Tower. That was quite the seed.
That just sounds awful.
It was an adventure. I'm a little unique in that I don't play randomizer. I don't do these races to win. I play them to have an adventure. So it lets me enjoy terrible seeds a little bit more. It's a coping mechanism.
Well, Vortex, getting ready for that.
Yeah, we'll see the Samaria set up here. If he gets frustrated with it, we'll see the bomb set up. He can do either one fairly comfortably. Oh, we have that. And wizard slaying. If only Aga 1 was still required.
What's up?
And nobody wants to use the net on Aga 2. That would be the one thing in this game that I would practice, is I would practice the Aghanim bug catching net fights. It's a little trickier because the hitboxes, there's a lot more timing involved. But I would just always fondly remember that as something I actually discovered about the game when I was a kid. I don't know how, but I did discover that by myself. Yeah, we have both runners for getting to go to the light world first. Or no, Tracie forgot to go to the dark world first. Went straight to the floodgates. Vortex getting right up in the jellyfish's face. No desire to deal with these clouds.
The Vortex trying to get the double fire rod shot there.
Yeah, not an impressively fast Argus fight. And there we find our silver arrows, so we are ready to go.
We're in super good.
Yeah, I would say that was still a respectable Argus fight, but I mean, with Tempered Sword, that many hearts, you know, you don't. You try to do it a little faster than that. There aren't any excuses at this point in the game.
Hey, speaking. There's one.
Yeah, we're gonna be opening up our. Oh, just like I mentioned, we're gonna be filling up those bottles with blue potion rather than grabbing that half magic. But pretty soon we're going to be entering Ganon's Tower. The last race I commentated, we did have key on check 1, so get those checks in, because this could be over faster than you can blink. I'm gonna go with 3. I always go with 3 because that covers Hope Room left, Hope Room right, and Tile Room, which I always secretly hope everybody goes for. I would be amazed to see that at this point from Vortex. You don't just blow a lead like that. But he might do it for me. He probably won't, but I can dream.
Tracie's having a little issue getting the direct. I'm not familiar with the setup that she's doing.
Oh, Vortex is grabbing the half magic too. Wants to be extra safe. Probably feeling pretty good about that routing. Again, knowing that timestamp at the point that we ended up, you know, realizing we had no choice but Aga 1 for go mode. You don't feel too uncomfortable. You know it's possible always that your opponent is ahead of you. Once you get past that first area of checks, unless everything falls right into your lap. Having a little problem with the dead rocks. But yeah, unless everything falls right into your lap, there's always the possibility that your opponent ended up routing better than you.
Yes, and we have Tracie getting ready to go fight Argus. Well, Vortex is getting ready to enter GT, so you have a few more seconds to get those guesses in for a big key. And I said 6.
I said 3. We got a fair number of we got a fair spread in there. We got Youthful Porpoise, Ever the Pessimist, 22.
But shout out to our tracker, Carlson. They're doing an amazing job. Having to keep up with 2 streams like
this. This has been a hard one to track too, since there was a pretty major divergence pretty early on, and you know, each runner picking up different items at different points in time. It can get a little hectic. And as expected, Vortex not going for the crowd-pleasing strategy, instead opting to be sensible.
It's what doing the dark.
Yeah, as much as I love that tile room play, I rarely go for it. And there we see it, the big key, and we've got enough keys to last us through the entire climb. So tile room not even making a cameo appearance. I believe so, unless we count seeing the torch. I don't know exactly how the guessing game works. It seems kind of like cheating, you know. You see the torch, and unless you knock the item off and pick it up, it doesn't count as a check. But
just to let you know, I have not seen this.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, torch does count. Torch does count because it was the first Hope Room chest that was checked. So yeah, it was indeed number 6. My brain told me, it's like, oh, there are 2 chests in Hope Room, so that would have been the 2 plus 4. So I can do math, but I can't actually pay attention.
Alright, so Vortex going the gauntlet. They're making good work. So
yeah, with Fire Rod strats, picking up that half magic made a lot of sense. Because you don't want to blow all your magic just doing this. But if you pick up the half magic, then you can really afford to, and it definitely makes things a lot simpler.
Deciding not to powder the anti-fairy, thus keeping the Lamos kind of in a better position.
Yeah, and also it helps him set up his red bar, which is going to help save time over the course of the rest of the climb.
And coming up to the most satisfying rooms in the game, there's just something about lining up those Mario shots to hit all those
Yeah, with as such a late game item in casual play, you never really get to mess around with it all that much. You really have to, be one of those people who just, loves playing the game, and it's like, I wonder what you can do with this item that you use for like, what, 2 things in the entire game? You use it to open the right side of Ganon's tower, and you use it in the basement of Misery Mire. But outside of that, you don't need it for anything. But it's such a strange and useful item. But that's also why it breaks so many things, because they didn't expect people to really use it that much.
Now we know that item is broken. Like, it just breaks. We have Tracie making her way up G-Team now, deciding also to...
Yeah, it would be slightly faster to go down hookshot across, take the portal up, take the portal rather at the bottom, climb up the mountain, head over. Since this way requires us to, go all the way over to the Turtle Rock Warp and use that one. But it doesn't save that much time, and the half magic's there. It's useful. Makes the margin of error a lot larger in Ganon's tower. As I mentioned, it opens up. We got 20 rupees in the validation chest, by the way, on the right side. But yeah, any margin of error you can increase cheaply, it's a good idea. And a very interesting strat here on the right side, not following the carpet. It is a relatively advanced strat that I didn't realize existed for quite some time. I would always follow the carpet like a damn sheep until I realized I didn't have to and could just walk along the top side of
Yeah, it's a very advanced strat, but we do have...
Oh, that was a beautiful triple.
That was a...
God pattern.
For another one.
Yeah, fantastic Aghanim 2 fight. All that practice on the first version really helped.
It fits in that bonk cow.
Yeah, I'm a little...
And now it's time to fight Bacon.
Yep.
Awesome.
A little disappointed that the Vortex didn't show off his signature move of chasing the bat as it flutters around. He usually likes to do that. We're gonna see what Tracie decides to do. Ooh. Tracie might be deciding to grab that. Oh no, Tracie found the big key already and was just grabbing that key off the torch. It appears. Can't think of any other reason she would choose to go upstairs if she hadn't found the big key yet. Been too riveted to that Aghanim 2 fight. See some cape strats. Another reason to pick up the half magic. It makes the phase 2 with Tempered Sword a lot quicker if you don't get a favorable pattern. One of the corners that lets you get some double spins in.
And Vortex does indeed have a blue potion, so his magic count being low does not...
This fight is all but done and dusted, barring a major execution error, which I wouldn't expect at this point from, honestly, any runner in this tournament. Ganon is tough casually, but at this stage in the tournament, just missed his torch glitch. At this stage in the tournament, each of the runners has played enough games just in the tournament that one could expect them to have a lock on the Ganon fight with this much equipment. Now this is a little dangerous depending on where Ganon decided to go. You see him walk into the middle of the room before he drinks that blue potion. You don't want to risk lining yourself up for those torch lights and suddenly realize Ganon's right on top of you and fall down and have to start all over. Especially when you know you're one hit away from victory, and get your GGs ready in chat for
And that sub 2 that you said GG's a Vortex with an official race time GT time of 1 hour, 58 minutes, 31 seconds. Get the
and he gets a blurb about the windfish as he's playing as Game Boy Color Link. It's not quite the Zelda's Link's Awakening sprite. I don't believe. It's been a while since I played that game, showing my lack of knowledge here.
Is it Four Swords Link?
It's Oracle of Ages. I don't remember if those use the same sprite as Link's Awakening. I know all of the Link's Awakening fans are going to mildly crucify me for...
And GG.
GG.
Oh, you're in here. Yep. Yeah, well done. I thought that, for it being a required full Turtle Rock dip for the mirror, I feel like that was still a pretty fast seed considering all the stuff you guys did.
Yeah, we literally the only thing we had left was Tower of Hera. That was the only thing that we had left on the entire map. That we hadn't ruled out.
I liked the decision to go down into Turtle Rock rather than hoping for Hera. I thought Hera would be the rookie mistake.
So we almost, well, it wasn't actually close. Gamma pretty authoritatively said just skip Hera, do Dark Death Mountain, because I kind of wanted to do it right then while we were there. We got mitts, we can like come back, do Spiral Cave, go up, and have it taken care of. But Gamma was like, no, we got progression. Let's just do Dark Death Mountain and get out of here. Take a look at TR, which was very fortunate, because we would have cleared Hera if we didn't even look at TR.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting at the start of the run. Tracie checked the Lumberjack right away, so we knew the whole time that Turtle Rock was locked behind Aga 1. And you guys checked Turtle Rock, you knew it was Bombos, but you didn't know where Bombos was for a long time. So we were kind of wondering how that was going to affect both of your decision making.
We go ahead, Gamma.
No. Yeah, I mean, he made the choice to do a check right after we got boots. It's good to have that knowledge early, but it also makes sense to check it after you have boots because it's already in logic. And as soon as we saw the bomb was floating up there, I'm telling Vortex, I really hope Meyer is Bombos as well. That way we don't really have to gamble for a pendant, possibly pendant TR. It might have progression. And it was just panic mode for a while. Like, oh, do we really want to go for it right now or clear a lot, be more thorough on our checks? Because, I was just worried for a while.
Yeah, you were pretty thorough, honestly. By the time it came time to do that Aghanim 1, the only thing you really had left to do was, before you went down into the Hyrule Castle dungeon, it was that and Hera that you really hadn't already checked. So it was... And at that point, it was really only an hour and a half in, maybe a little more. And it's... At that point, you're not... You've still made really good time at that point. That's not a time you're unhappy about. It's mostly the chore that you're dreading.
Right. The whole time we were clearing... So from... As soon as we got the second item out of Meyer, like, the discussion was, when are we going... It wasn't if, it was when are we going to do Turtle Rock. We did Pyramid Fairy and Catfish, which was a good play, then Skullwoods into Smith Chain, and we the whole climb I was just worried, like, did we do too much? But Gamma said, like, if it was any of those places, like, it was my decision to do Purple Chest and Agina. If it was any of those places, like, it would have felt so bad to do the TR dip, to have it be like Sphere Zero or something that we'd like almost gotten to. So we covered all the like, we didn't consciously skip Purple Chest and Smith Chain earlier. There was just something else to do, or Agina, like, there was never a reason to go to Desert. But Hera, we did make the conscious decision to skip, and so that's the only one we kept on skipping.
Yeah, on Tracie's side, she did decide to go and do Tower of Hera. Thankfully was able to skip basement, but no Hera pod.
Mm-hmm.
So it was it's still not a long dungeon, but quick checking it with Hera pot would be ideal if you weren't sure. She did it on her first trip up to Death Mountain.
I remember when we were talking about like whether to do Hera or just do Dark Death Mountain and which Dark Death Mountain portal to take. I remember saying to Gamma, like, oh man, like if Mirrors and Hera, that would suck so bad right now because we're never coming back for that. And that was true. We would never have come back for that. Or like would have been far too late.
Well, yeah, you would have ended up clearing Turtle Rock first.
I think Tracie would have probably been done if she checked it the first time she was on the mountain. She would have been done in go mode like half an hour earlier. So that was another reason, because I was like, Hera was I was pretty comfortable with keeping on skipping Hera, because if it was Hera, she probably did it, or like she could have done it and she would have been done by now if it was Hera. So
yeah, I was also telling him as we were making the climb up to Death Mountain, well, let's see what we get in, Paradox Cave. If we get anything good, we'll probably hold off on Hera. We got the Fire Rod, and then we got Mist. I'm like, okay, we still have all the water checks to do. We have Ice Palace open to us now. Let's hope, nothing's in Hera and just skip it for now.
Yeah, we have Tracie finish it with a time of 2 hours and 5 seconds. So that's pretty close, all things considered. It's within 8 minutes, if my math isn't terrible, which it often is. Yeah, we're gonna try to get Tracie in here before too long. See that one swordless boss kill?
Yeah.
The one boss that you really don't want to use your sword on anyway.
We were joking about how long it was going to be until that shield was in logic on Armos. Didn't take very long. $155 collection rating for a seed like this. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's up 2 on a seed where Aga 1 becomes not anything to sneeze at.
We have Tracie in here. GG.
Yeah, thanks. GG's to you, Vortex.
GG.
Yeah, GG's, Tracie.
I have one question. What was your GT route? Did you do Hope Room? Was it going to be Hope Room left?
No. Oh, Hope Room left. Yeah.
Yeah, I did DM strats, and like it was my 5th check, and I was like, oh, feels bad.
Had not been in there. Would you have checked the chest and tile room?
No, I was.
I was commentating.
I thought about it because you were commentating, but I wouldn't have.
I gotta know how when did you do Aga?
So we did Purple Chest and Agina. Like we cleaned up all the other stuff. All we had left was Hera.
Okay, so we did Hera, didn't do Skullwoods.
Okay, yeah, we did Skullwoods after we did Pyramid Fairy and Catfish, and then Smith Chain. Gamma wanted to skip Purple Chest and Agina, but I was sort of like
hard to pin down exactly where the time difference really came from. There wasn't a super obvious single thing where it's like, oh, okay, well, this person left this check forever. It was just sort of small incremental inefficiencies that sort of
yeah.
built up,
Well, the skipping of Super Bunny Cave was not on purpose.
Yeah, but I mean, even that was where all the time came.
Well, yeah, but that was definitely a bit of a time loss there.
So what's funny, I think, actually, is that I think Gammachu and I both had the same idea that like we wanted to push Total Rock a bit earlier, as as there were less good things and more bad things left on the table. And I think our racers didn't want to, so we kind of had to compromise with them on like one fewer big thing left to do.
You could have convinced me.
I
we decided. Remember, we had the conversation. Let's do one of the bad things and not both. So
but I just know that you were not really wanting to do the Turtle Rock play, so I felt like I was convincing you to do it before. Not last.
I was actually kind of feeling it. If Gamma had said we're skipping Skullwoods and all of Smith Chain, I would have been like, okay.
I just felt nervous. I mean, it's
Gamma
such a hard.
made the call to do Skullwoods and the Hammer Pegs and Smiths, which I like didn't mind either. Like that's the kind of player I normally am. But I was, man, everything was so early in Logic. There was the cape on Blind, which Blind wasn't hammer locked. Everything was Sphere 1.
Yeah, we got a lot of good stuff early, and then the mirror just hid.
So it was just the boots that were keeping Turtle Rock closed. For most of the seed. And they didn't unlock anything else, so I was like, I was pretty comfortable with the play. I felt like we cleared too much, though.
I do too. I mean, it's such a hard call because the discussion was, if we do it and it's wrong, then we lose. But if we don't do it and it's wrong and we do too much other stuff, then we lose.
Yeah, I mentioned that I have never personally been bit by a gamble on Turtle Rock.
I have.
Something about the logic in that just seems to work out a lot of the time.
No, I've been badly bit on going to Turtle Rock early, so it was it's like at the end three items in Skullwoods versus 5 items in the Turtle Rock, because you include Green Pendant, but we figured we avoided it. So many people do Skullwoods is just overworld, so let's check it early. They were like, well, it's more likely they checked it, so.
That's how we felt about Hera too, because like I was like it would have been really easy to do Hera before Spiral and then Dark Death Mountain.
Yep.
I was like, if it was there, Tracie would probably be done by now. Like that was what my thinking was that
we did do Hera. That was another one of those ones where we were kind of on the fence. Do we do it? Do we not? And we ended up doing it. It really paid. We had a race. The very first race I think was we got a mirror in Tower of Hera, and it won it for us. So
Yeah, Pendant Mulder. Very bad isolation if you were to isolate that.
Yeah. Did you pick up half magic?
Yes.
Yeah, I did too. I asked him if he would. He's like, only in a co-op to mess with my teammates, and I was like,
I told him, go with what you're comfortable. You're gonna reach that point at one point where you're gonna be like, nah, I don't need half magic to do the climb or blue potions. It's gonna take a while, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was actually saying before that happened. It's like, I bet we don't even see the half magic. We've got bottles. We'll just buy some blue potions, and that's gonna be good enough. And then you end up grabbing.
Yeah, so we both grabbed it. That's cool. I mean, you think about it, it's definitely slower to go up the mountain that way. There's no question. But I mean, it's not like you're going super far out of the way. There are definitely locations I would have skipped it. That was easy enough.
It gives you the freedom to be a little more, blasé with, say, the fire rod during the gauntlet section. It opens up a lot of things to make GP just reliable. You don't have to think about it. You can focus on making that last put as much as possible. It prevents spaghetti. It holds it at bay.
It definitely made my gauntlet faster. I don't know if it was that made the difference back in the time.
I usually use my silvers or even just a bow on gauntlet, but my arrow count was low, so I was being a little too cautious there. I should have probably just switched to the fire rod.
Azder, I was wondering for a while, would you have done the Aga play immediately after Meyer, or do it be a little more, more clear, thorough?
I would have at least done Pyramid Fairy, and then we had skipped to Gino and Ice Road Cave, so some of those easy flute one-offs. I might have skipped Catfish. I was kind of on the fence about it, but I might have gone. I don't. It definitely would have been earlier.
Yeah, because I was wondering too.
You should have pushed harder, but no. I could have also pushed harder.
No, I don't. I don't want to push. Like, I definitely like a big risk thing like that I would do. That I would take the fall for myself. That I'd be fine with that. I wouldn't push on somebody else.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Like I was so on the fence though that entire time. Like
it's such a hard decision, but it's
it is. It's so hard. Yeah, we
but
saw
I
that.
I really thought that like we have to not do it last. Like
yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's
One last question regarding Meyer. I noticed Vortex set up spooky action.
Yeah, I haven't
and
learned that yet.
using the god routing to go defeat the boss early, and then ended up picking up the since one of the items was on the boss, ended up just dipping back in, finding the other item, I think within 1 or 2
It was
chests.
the first check we did, yeah.
Yeah, it was the first check. Whereas Tracie, you guys ended up doing a longest possible routing, basically, of Misery Mire.
Well, yeah, because
in terms of chests,
because the second item, second item being on Vidi, yeah.
so even coming out of that, you were already a little bit behind.
Okay, so the Mire, our Mire was much longer. Okay.
Yeah, and not through any fault of your own, but it just goes to show that, you know, setting up that spooky action, and you're like, okay, you know, you don't want to spend too much time before, you know, you actually set it off. That led to some really fortuitous.
Yeah. If it hadn't been a Godmire, like, we would have done the exact same thing. I think, like, I wouldn't have left anything behind before the boss if that one of those first 2 chests wasn't the big key.
Yep.
But I think we headed straight there just because it's like, well, we have it. Like, we have to kill Vitreous no matter what. So, like, maybe we take a little time loss on the walk in if it's the last place we look. But otherwise, yeah.
Man, I forgot we got a 3rd bottle there. I'm looking at my final screen. I see a bee in a bottle.
Where was your second? We had. Oh, was there a bottle in Hera? It must have been.
Yeah, there was.
It was. Boss reward. It was basically Ambrosia.
I after Ambrosia, and I gotta tell you, I'm so happy to not have to worry about boot synths anymore. After Ambrosia, it's like, you know, every time I see an item on the boss, like, well, it's an Ambrosia dungeon.
Everybody loves Ambrosia until they play it.
I mean, it's the routing in Ambrosia is an interesting way to route, and I'll still play. I play it in the ladder races, but the thing I don't like the boot synth, because it changes my routing. It
it forces you to make poor decisions.
Yeah,
it tricks you.
Yeah, it totally does. You know,
although I did Eastern Palace.
I did have 2 or 3 days ago. I had the boots in Light World, and they were in Link's house, so that was kind of fun.
Oh man!
Last time I got boots in Light World, it was mirror locked. That was the same. I talked about the seed earlier, where mirror was behind flute, was behind Trinex, was on a pendant. And it's like, come on.
Well,
also, logical first bow was in Mire.
Yeah, I've had Death Mountain boots on Mimic Cave. I've had twice Bumper Ledge for Dark World. The second time it became a cape hunt. Cape was go mode.
Anyway,
I've had my share of crappy Ambrosia seeds.
About time to think about wrapping this up. It's getting late, depending on where you live. If you're fortunate enough to live in Europe, I think it's nice and early for you. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, GG's Vortex. Good luck next week. I guess I'll be fighting for 4 and 2. But I don't know which bracket 4 and 2 even puts me in, because I'm glad I don't have to be the one to separate the 4 and 2s into the top 2 brackets.
Same.
Imagine how much lower these times could have been with a nicer seed. I mean, this was really well played races.
Yeah,
this improvement. I still have a long ways to go to get to where I want to go, but you know, it's little by little, little improvements here and there.
Yeah, GG to you. Good luck. I'm still, part of me thinks that I'm going to be right there fighting to be 4 and 2 next week, or like not to be, but like that's what my head says I already am. So it's
well, 4 and 2 was my goal at the beginning. I still have a shot at that. So
yeah, this was definitely the matchup I've been most worried about. Because I know you do your homework. I know you I remember you talking about the mind games a couple weeks ago when I restreamed your race, and I was like,
Yep.
Okay.
You were watching me today, and I was debating whether I should do something goofy.
Yeah. But when it came down to it, I just wanted to play my game as best as I could, and I think I did today. Like I don't think I could have played this seed any better, other than during doing TR earlier. But that's what you always say after you come close to last location.
Well, that's the thing that always drives me nuts when I'm listening to comms and when people say, "Oh, something's such a gamble." Well, it's also a gamble. It's a gamble to do it. It's a gamble to skip it, because if it's not on path, you're either wasting time or you're missing something. And it's just sometimes it's the choice of crappy choices. That's what this was. This was a bunch of crappy choices.
Did you open Laser Bridge top down or bottom up?
Top down.
I went bottom up, so it was like we were really, really worried.
Wow. No, I always go top down.
Yeah, I took a hit, so I was really low, so I just took the safety exit just to make sure there was no unfortunate.
That's fair. Yeah, sometimes if I get low, I'll do that too, and then but usually I'll have at least one or two done before that, and then you're low and it's like whoops. But yeah, so I got that mirror right away, mirrored right out, and let's go to swamp, let's go to desert. At least I didn't do the forget to go to desert, because I wasn't thinking of it right away. It's like, oh, swamp, because swamp is the obvious.
I did desert first, and I could have had silvers for both landmo fights.
Yeah, I should have used silvers.
Nice,
I should have used silvers on my landmo. I used fire rod because one less menu, and I wasn't thinking about the silvers. And then Proceed did not have a good fight, so.
Yeah, I didn't have a great fight either, but. Yeah, GG's. Thanks. I want to say thanks to Lumaga for picking this up for Restream. Thanks to Ezmar and Mocha. And
improvement.
Azder and I have known each other for a while, but Gammachu, I know you're also one of the top players. So there have been some weeks where it's like, well, I think we have the better mentor, and this week I think we both had good mentors. So
yeah,
no, definitely. I know Azder is a good Rando player, so you're definitely in good hands with him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thanks.
Well, thank y'all for an amazing race. If you're not following our runners already, please give them a follow. And I'd like to thank Ezmar for co-comment.
Yeah, likewise. And again, we mentioned our Restreamer, Lumaga, and the tracker, Carlson. And I'd like to just remind everybody we've got some more races coming up this weekend. We've got one at 12 p.m. Eastern between Kaja and Darity Peels. So be sure you check that one out if you're, if it works out with your schedule. And any final words, Mocha?
Yeah, GG to our runners. Also, big shout out to GoMo Podcast for putting on this mentor tournament. If you have not followed them on iTunes or wherever you're podcasting, how you get your podcasts, go check them out. GoMo Podcast. Like I said earlier, this past podcast was about glitches, top 10 glitches that they say every runner should try and learn. And that was actually voted by our community. So give them a follow on whatever podcasting platform you have.
Yeah, with that, I think that'll be it. So see you guys tomorrow.
Later.